At number 10, let's look at gambling and alcohol. So of course, gambling and alcohol are some of the biggest, most serious sins in the religion of Islam. Muslims are not permitted at all to consume alcohol, and it's written in the Quran, and I quote, "O believers, intoxicants, gambling, idols, and drawing lots for decisions are all evil of Satan's handiwork. So shun them so you may be successful." And that's taken from Surah 5 verses 90. Also, Ibn Umar reported that Prophet Muhammad said this: "Every intoxicant is khamar, and every intoxicant is forbidden. He who drinks wine in this world and dies while he is addicted to it, not having repented, will not be given a drink in the hereafter." And that's found in Sahih Muslim, number 92. Next up, hurting yourself is also completely haram. Hurting yourself, like hitting your face or chest for grief or things like that, or hitting another person such as your child or another brother or sister, is strictly prohibited. It is stated in the Quran that killing does not mean just taking life, but it also means hurting oneself or hurting anyone else in any way. It's mentioned in the Quran, "Believers, do not devour one another's possessions wrongfully. Rather than that, let there be trading by mutual consent. You shall not kill yourself. Surely Allah is ever compassionate to you." And that's taken from Surah 4 verses 29. So obviously, killing yourself in this context is not necessarily that. Next up, number 8, interest. Riba or interest is not allowed in Islam because it is a system that makes poor people poorer and rich people richer. Narrated by Abdullah ibn Hanzala, the Prophet Muhammad said this: "The dirham of riba which a man receives knowingly is worse than committing adultery 36 times. Wow, okay. Bayhaqi also had reported the hadith that I just mentioned in Suhab al-Iman, and he added an additional statement that says, "Hell befits him whose flesh has been nourished by the unlawful." Whoa. Also, another surprising one, silk and gold on men. Islam actually forbids 2 types of adornment for men while allowing them for women. The first type is gold ornaments, and the second is pure silk clothing. According to Ali, the Prophet Muhammad took silk in his right hand and some gold in his left hand and declared this: "These two are haram for the males among my followers." So the prohibition of gold applies to gold rings and gold pens even, gold watches, gold cigarette cases and lighters, gold teeth. You know, sometimes guys have gold teeth in their mouth, and so on and so forth. The strictly haram thing at number 6 is intimate acts with yourself. Doing this for both men and women is completely haram in Islam. According to Al-Imam Shafi'i, the following verse from the Quran forbids these acts: "And who guard their modesty save from their wives or slaves that their right hand possesses, for then they are not blameworthy. But whoso craveth beyond that, such are transgressors." And that passage is found in Surah 23 verses 5 to 7 of the Quran. Now, these verses are clear in prohibiting all illegal intimate acts, including those done with oneself, except for wives or what their right hand possesses. Anyone who goes beyond those parameters becomes a transgressor or a sinner. Next up, number 5, tattoos. Whether they cause pain or not, tattoos are haram in all forms. According to Muslims, tattooing involves altering Allah's creation. So the Prophet Muhammad cursed both those who tattoo and those who are tattooed. May Allah curse the women who do tattoos and those for whom tattoos are done, those who pluck their eyebrows and those who file their teeth for the purpose of beautification and alter the creation of Allah. And that's taken from Sunan Ibn Majah 1989. Moving on to number 4, this strictly forbidden thing is taking your own life. Now, in this day and age, we frequently see people, they cause themselves to pass away due to depression and other insecurities and various different thoughts that they may have. But Muslims believe that Allah tests people in various ways, but it is forbidden to end your own life purposely. According to a hadith in Bukhari, it says, "He who ends his life by throttling shall keep on throttling himself in the hellfire forever. And he who ends his life by stabbing himself shall keep on stabbing himself in hellfire." And that's found in Bukhari, Junais 84. Forcing your wife comes up next at number 3. Forcing spouses is one of the most serious sins that anyone can commit according to Islam. Instead, the Prophet Muhammad, he taught Muslims to be friendly with their wives, even saying and advising the Muslims that, well, they should make their wives their best friends. As a matter of fact, there's a quote from the Prophet Muhammad that goes as follows: "The best of you are those who are the best to their wives, and I am the best of you to my wives." And that's taken from Al-Tirmidhi 3895. Okay, next up, music, number 2. So music is a big debate, whether it's haram or not, especially in Islamic circles. Some scholars say that music is completely haram in Islam, while others say that, well, there's only certain types of music that is forbidden, as well as certain types of musical instruments that are considered forbidden or haram in Islam. Anas reported that the Prophet Muhammad had these words to say: "There will certainly be people from my ummah who will attempt to legalize fornication, wearing of silk for males, consuming alcohol, and the use of musical instruments." And that quote is found in Al-Jami as-Saghir 139. So we see a passage showing that music is haram, but the debate is, well, in what context? What type of music is haram? With that said, let's end this episode off at number 1, SHIRK. According to Islam, God does not share his divine attributes with anyone else. According to the Islamic doctrine of Tawheed, which means oneness, associating partners with God is strictly forbidden. SHIRK, which literally means association, is the acceptance of other gods and divinities as associates of God or equal to God, and those who practice shirk are called mushrik. Shirk is a sin that will not be forgiven if a person passes away without repenting of it, according to the Quran. There's one passage that I would like to quote, and it goes as follows: "Allah does not forgive the formation of partners with him, but he does forgive anything else to whom he pleases. To form partners with Allah is to devise a most heinous sin." And that's found in Surah 4, verses 48. Well, let's just jump right in. Starting at number 10, we have mistreating your wife. So mistreating your spouse is one of the biggest sins, and it's considered haram in Islam. Now, the Prophet Muhammad, he taught people that they need to be very friendly and kind to their wives. According to Muslim belief, Prophet Muhammad even stated that you need to try to make your spouse your best friend. In a hadith narrated by Al-Tirmidhi, it says, the Prophet said, "The best of you are those who are the best to their wives, and I am the best of you to my wives." The next thing considered haram in Islam is tattoos. Now, there's a hadith that says this: "May Allah curse the women who do tattoos and those from whom tattoos are done, those who pluck their eyebrows and those who file their teeth for the purpose of beautification and alter the creation of Allah." Specifically, that's found in Al-Bukhari Al-Libas, number 5587. Charging interest is at number 8, and the term riba refers to interest, and this is something that is completely haram in Islam, largely due to the fact that it makes poor people even poorer. So like if you owe money and you're charged interest, in the end, you end up poor because you end up spending more money than you actually owed. Now, in the hadith from Abdullah ibn Hamzallah, this is what is recorded that the Prophet Muhammad had said. The Prophet said, "A dirham or riba which a man receives knowingly is worse than committing adultery 36 times." And you know, debt payments is what kills a lot of people, because if you owe $20,000 with interest, you probably owe closer to $25,000, $30,000 in some cases. Next time I gotta pay off a car loan or something, I'm gonna tell them, "Listen, man,
you're charging interest on that, that's haram. Adultery and fornication come in at number 7. Now there's a passage in the Quran, Surah 17 verses 32 that says this, and do not approach unlawful sexual intercourse, indeed it is ever an immorality and is evil as a way. So of course, having relations outside of your marriage, as well as having intimate relations not being married, that's haram. Drinking alcohol is another big haram thing in Islam, and it's found in the Quran, Surah 5 verses 90. There's a passage that says this, O you who have believed, indeed intoxicants, gambling, sacrifices on stone altars to other than Allah, and divining arrows are but defilement from the work of Satan, so avoid it that you may also be successful. Now moving on to number 5, slaughtering animals the wrong way. This is also haram. So if a Muslim is slaughtering an animal without saying Allah's name, it'll be considered haram. A person should say Bismillah Allahu Akbar. Also, this is what the Quran has to say in Surah 6 verses 121. Eat not, O believers, of that meat on which Allah's name has not been pronounced at the time of slaughtering of the animal, for it is fisq, which is a sin. Most of you, even if you're not Muslim, probably knew this already. Eating pork, that is haram. Even if you use Allah's name during the slaughtering of a pig, eating pork is still going to be haram. Surah 5 verses 3 says this, prohibited to you are dead animals, blood, the flesh of swine, and that which has been dedicated to other than Allah. And those animals killed by strangling, or by a violent blow, or by a headlong fall, or by the goring of horns, and those from which a wild animal has eaten, except what you are able to slaughter before its death, and those which are sacrifice of stone altars. And prohibited is that you seek decision through divining arrows. That is grave disobedience. This day those who believe have despaired of defeating your religion. So fear them not, but fear me, the day I have perfected for you your religion and completed my favor upon you, and have approved for you Islam as religion. But whoever is forced by severe hunger with no inclination to sin, then indeed Allah is forgiving and merciful. So yeah, very long passage that included the point that eating pork is haram in Islam. In number 3, we have suicide. In the hadith, specifically Bukhari Janaiz 84, it says, he who commits suicide by throttling shall keep on throttling himself in the hellfire forever. And he who commits suicide by stabbing himself shall keep on stabbing himself in the hellfire. Number 2, a very big haram thing, making statues and pictures, especially when it comes to prophets of Islam. Now in the hadith narrated by Abdullah ibn Umar, this is what it says. Allah's messenger said, those who make these images will be punished on the day of resurrection, and it will be said to them, make alive what you have created. And finally, most Muslims would agree on this, that shirk is the biggest haram thing in the religion of Islam. Shirk refers to associating partners with Allah, and this is the most serious thing. It's said that the Prophet Muhammad said these words, shall I not tell you of the most serious of the major sins? We said, of course, O Messenger of Allah. He said, associating anything in worship with Allah. Also, there's a verse in the Quran, Surah 4 verses 48, and this is what it has to say. Indeed, Allah does not forgive association with him, but he forgives what is less than that for him who he wills. And he who associates others with Allah has certainly fabricated a tremendous sin. So in the religion of Islam, only Allah can be seen or viewed or worshipped in the position of Allah. Nobody else or nothing else can be compared.
Let's get to it. So our first thing on the list of harams are eating carrion, blood, or pork meat. The Quran is very clear about which meats are acceptable for consumption and which meats are considered sinful if eaten. It is a commonly known fact that followers of Islam must not eat pork products or meat that is still bloody and has not been thoroughly cooked. It is also forbidden to eat carrion, or decaying flesh of dead animals. Any meat that is consumed must also be halal, meaning the meat has been slaughtered and prepared as prescribed by Muslim law. Now, I found it very interesting that the Quran does mention that if one is in a state of starvation and has absolutely no choice but to eat these meats, out of pure desperation and survival that Allah is forgiving and merciful. In Surah 16, Ayah 115, the Holy Quran states that Allah has forbidden you only carrion and blood and the flesh of swine, also any animal over which the name of any other than Allah has been pronounced. But whoever eats of them under compelling necessity, neither desiring it nor exceeding the limit of absolute necessity, surely for such action Allah is much forgiving and most merciful. Alright, moving on to talking about the making of statues and pictures. Allah describes himself as the Almighty and original creator through titles such as Al-Khaliq, the creator of everything out of nothingness, and Al-Fatir, the bringer into existence, giving every living thing its particular nature, objective, and meaning. Now, there are many hadiths that discuss the sin of producing statues and pictures to imitate human form. These hadiths state that the image makers are cursed. They are called some of the most evil creations. They will be most severely punished on the Day of Judgment, and they will be punished until they breathe life into their creations. However, they will never be able to do that, and the angels will not enter houses in which there are statues. It is also believed that if a person, or an artist, really wanted to depict or create the essence of a human being by means of either painting or sculpture, he will then have encroached upon the rights and authority that belong to only Allah. And it is believed that those who compete with Allah in creation will receive the greatest punishment on the Day of Judgment, for that is a blasphemous act. Let's talk about marital relations. So there is some discussion about a wife refusing to engage in marital relations with her husband. On the basis of the following hadith, it is generally understood that if a wife refuses relations with her husband, she will be cursed by the angel. Abu Huraira reports from the Prophet that when a husband calls his wife to bed and she refuses, and as a result the husband spends the night in anger, then angels curse the wife all night until dawn. Bukhari. Interestingly, in Islam, it is believed that a husband and a wife protect the chastity of one another by providing one another a legitimate means of satisfying their physical urges. This protection of chastity is essential for the preservation of the family unit. Hence, anything which puts chastity in jeopardy is disliked by the Almighty. However, it's important to mention that the basis of refusal by the husband or wife must also be taken into consideration. For example, if either of them is tired, sick, or simply not in the proper mood and in the appropriate frame of mind, then it certainly does not entail any wrath of the Almighty. It is only when a spouse starts to deliberately evade such natural needs of the other that the attitude becomes questionable. Fact number 7, the sin of spying and eavesdropping on others' private conversations. So according to Islam, it is not permissible to engage in namimah, which is malicious gossip, and spying on private conversations. Namimah is considered a major sin as it involves sharing what others have said in order to cause trouble among them. The definition of namimah is also uncovering secrets and disclosing that which is not appropriate to disclose. Hence, followers of Islam should keep silent and refrain from telling everything that they see of people's situations, unless speaking of it will bring some benefit to a Muslim or to ward off some harm. This can be seen in the Quran, Surah 49, Ayah 12, where it is said, "O ye who believe, avoid suspicion as much as possible. For suspicion in some cases is a sin, and spy not on each other behind their backs. Would any of you like to eat the flesh of his dead brother? Nay, ye would abhor it. But fear Allah, for Allah is oft returning, most merciful." It is also narrated in Al-Sahihain from Abu Huraira that the Prophet said, "Beware of suspicion, for suspicion is the falsest of speech. Do not eavesdrop, do not spy on one another, do not envy one another, do not forsake one another, do not hate one another. Be, O slaves of Allah, brothers." Al-Bukhari. Next, we'll be talking about the sin of women appearing like men and vice versa. So according to Islam, Allah's curse is upon women who appear like men and upon men who appear like women. In his book, Lawful and the Prohibited in Islam, Yusuf al-Qaradawi, the prominent religious scholar, writes, "The Prophet declared that a woman should not wear a man's clothing or vice versa. He cursed men who imitate women and women who imitate men. Furthermore, the evil of such conduct, which affects both the life of the individual and that of the society, is that it constitutes a rebellion against the natural order of things. According to this natural order, there are men and there are women, and each of the two sexes has its own distinctive characteristics. However, if men become effeminate and women masculinized, this natural order will be reversed and will disintegrate. It is believed that among those who are cursed by Allah and His angels, both in this world and in the hereafter, the Prophet has mentioned that a man whom Allah has created as male, but who becomes effeminate by imitating women, and a woman whom Allah has created as female, but who becomes masculinized by imitating men. For this reason, the Prophet forbade men from wearing clothes or things pertaining to women. Fact number 5 brings us to talk about the sin of ending your own life. Now, as is common in many religions, ending one's own life is seen as a great sin. Allah does not permit His believers to intentionally end their own lives in any way. This can be seen through verses of the Holy Quran and Hadith. In Surah 6, Ayah 151, Allah says, "And do not kill the soul which Allah has forbidden to be killed, except by legal right. This He has instructed you that you may use reason." In Surah 4, Ayah 29, Allah says, "Nor kill yourselves, for verily Allah has been to you most merciful. If any do that in rancor and injustice, soon we shall cast them into the fire, and it is easy for Allah to do so." So essentially, Islam advises that life does not belong to us like property. Rather, it is granted to every human being as a trust. Neither is it allowable for a person to take another human's life without justification, nor is it permissible for one in Islam to destroy their own existence. God has declared both of these actions as grave sins. Let's take a look at some of the habits that are forbidden in Islam, such as drinking alcoholic beverages and gambling. Now, Islam does not permit believers to engage in behaviors such as drinking alcohol and gambling, as they are deemed to be sinful acts. The Holy Quran states that, "For those who engage in these activities, in them is a great sin, and some profit for men, but the sin is greater than the profit." It also mentions that, "O ye who believe, intoxicants and gambling, stones and arrows are an abomination of Satan's handiwork. Abstain such that you may prosper. Satan's plan is to excite hatred between you with intoxicants and gambling, and to hinder you from the remembrance of Allah. And from prayer will you not then abstain." Fact number 3, the sin of committing adultery or fornication. Now, chastity is defined as controlling oneself from forbidden desires due to the love of Allah the Almighty in response to His command, as well as for seeking His reward in return. Islam has always supported the idea of chaste living and has thus legislated many laws that reduce the strong impact of these desires and control them. It has also encouraged remaining on the straight path and warned against giving into unlawful desires of the flesh. Fornication and adultery are forbidden and classified as major and destructive sins. Islam has even forbidden everything that could lead to these sins, such as immoral exchanges of looks between two sexes, depraved words, seductive moves, an unmarried and unrelated man and a woman being in a room alone together, and anything else which could lead to sin. In Surah 17, Ayah 32, Allah the Almighty says what means, "And come not near to unlawful sex. Verily, it is a great sin and an evil way that leads to hell unless forgiven by Allah." This opens the road for other evils. When a man commits adultery, faith comes out of his heart and hovers above him until he leaves the sin. Then faith comes back to him again. All right, let's talk a little bit about the sin of not performing prayer. So, salat, or prayer, is the most important practice in Islam because it is daily worship. Since the Arabic word salat is rooted in the word silat, which means connection or contact, the best translation for salat is contact prayer. Like other religious duties, the contact prayers are a gift from God. It is believed that souls need nourishment just like the body needs nourishment from food. Without nourishment, souls will not grow and develop. It is believed that the 5 contact prayers are like meals for the soul. They are spread throughout the day, like meals for the body, and consist of dawn, noon, afternoon, sunset, and nighttime prayer. Those who do not develop their soul cannot be close to God because they will not be able to stand His immense energy. Thus, they will end up astray away from God. Now, there are several passages in the Quran that address the importance of daily prayer. In Surah 19, Ayah 59, the Quran mentions that then there has succeeded them a posterity who has given up prayers and followed lusts. So they will be thrown in hell, except those who repent. And bringing us down to our fact number 1, an action of sin is not fasting on a day of Ramadan without proper excuse. Fasting during Ramadan is one of the pillars of Islam, and it is not permissible for a Muslim to fail to fast it except without a reasonable excuse. Whoever fails to fast during Ramadan or breaks the fast during this time for a legitimate excuse such as sickness, travel, or pregnancy is required to make up the days that they did not fast. As for one who does not fast the month of Ramadan deliberately out of heedlessness, even if that is just one day of the month in the sense of that he does not intend to fast it at all, or he breaks the fast after having started to fast with no excuse, he has committed a major sin and must repent. Surah 2, Ayah 183 mentions, "O you who have believed, decreed upon you is fasting, as it was decreed upon those before you, that you may become righteous." With the above verse, the Holy Quran makes it very clear that fasting was ordained compulsory on all Muslims and that they have to fast if they are to stay righteous.
At number 10, we have pork chops. A pork chop, like other meat chops, is a loin cut that's taken from close to the spine of a pig and is usually a rib or a part of the vertebrae. Pork chops are unprocessed and they're pretty much leaner than other cuts of pork, and chops are commonly served as an individual portion. And we know that this is haram because Muslims don't eat pork. Number 9, this comes as a surprise, roasted peanuts. Peanuts that have been roasted, whether in oil or dry, are often roasted in gelatin that is composed of pig hooves. Adding gelatin is used to help the salt and other spices that are added during the roasting to bond with the peanuts for a more flavorful result. They taste really good, by the way, but yeah, be careful if you are traveling to a non-Muslim country or you live outside of a non-Muslim country and you're looking for halal foods. Roasted peanuts may be haram. Just make sure that you read the ingredients before you try to eat some roasted peanuts. Number 8 brings us to cake mix. Now, who doesn't love a good cake? But you see, beef or pork fat are common ingredients in dry box cake mixes, and these are fats often listed on the ingredients list as lard. So to avoid this, they often recommend that you just gotta make cakes at home, or if you're Muslim, check to see if the lard is actually from a pig or if it's from another animal. But again, if it is pig lard, then it is haram. Tortilla wraps, another very surprising one. So most restaurants and homemade versions of tortillas, they're often made with lard again, and store-bought varieties of this don't usually contain lard, but it's still worth taking a look at the ingredients list just to make sure. Another delicious dessert, very popular in my home country, Jamaica, this is rum cake. Now, a rum cake is literally exactly what it sounds like. It's a type of dessert cake which contains rum. Oftentimes it's like soaked in it, but it's soaked to various different degrees depending on how strong you want the rum taste to be. In most of the Caribbean, rum cakes are a traditional holiday season dessert. Traditionally, dried fruit is soaked in rum for months and then added to dough prepared with sugar, which has been caramelized by boiling in water. Wine vinegar comes in at number 5. Wine vinegar is either made from red wine or white wine, and white wine vinegar is a moderately tangy vinegar that French cooks often use to make hollandaise sauces, vinaigrettes, soups, and things like that. And on the other hand, red wine vinegar is widely used in cooking but may have other applications as well. Most often, this is used in salad dressings and other types of marinades. But usually though, the levels of remaining alcohol in red wine vinegar come to no more than 2%. Number 4 leads us to blood sausages, and this goes by many different names like black pudding as well as kazanka. But blood sausage is a delicacy that is enjoyed by food lovers all around the world. It is made the same way as any other sausage, but instead of just containing meat and other spices, it also contains blood. And it usually includes some kind of filler to soak up the blood as well, just so that it doesn't all leak out while you're cooking it. The extra moisture and the flavor from the blood does give the sausage a very distinct taste, so it will taste different from other kinds of sausages because blood is very high in iron, so you'll notice that, yeah, there is a difference in taste there. Moving on now to number 3, escargot. Escargot, also known as snails, is a dish consisting of cooked edible land snails. Now, they're often served as hors d'oeuvre and consumed by French people as well as people from Portugal, Spain, Great Britain, and Germany. Now, according to Muslim scholar Ibn Hazm, it's not permissible to eat land snails or any other insects and vermins like cockroaches, ants, and bees, and flies, and mosquitoes, you know, things like that. This, by the way, is based on what the Quran says. It says, forbidden to you for food are al-maita, which refers to dead animals, and unless you're able to slaughter it before its death. This is taken from Surah 5 verses 3. Coming in at number 2 is another very popular food. It is pepperoni. It's very popular topping on pizza. Although there are halal alternatives, this food as it is made originally is haram. Pepperoni is also known as pepperoni sausage, and it's an American variety of salami, and it's usually made from cured pork and beef all mixed up and mashed together. And it is not halal at all when it comes to Islam because it's a type of meat that is not allowed to be consumed by any Muslims. It comes from pigs. And we're gonna end off this episode with chocolate with alcohol. Chocolates, like certain kinds of truffles chocolate, can contain alcohol, so definitely check before you consume. You can definitely get drunk on liquor chocolates as well, but you will, however, need to consume a lot. A standard shot of alcohol is 30 millimeters, so you would need to eat almost 4 100-gram blocks of chocolate to get 1 shot of liquor. Most people would need to consume more than 700 grams of chocolate to be over the legal blood alcohol limit. So to get quite drunk, most people would need to eat close to 2 kilograms. But either way, guys, if you are of the haram persuasion, definitely stay away from chocolates with alcohol. Yeah, always double check.